I want to write down, or I wrote down something on January 20th of 21 after the election of Biden. And I want to read what I wrote. I had this thought. My face is set like flint against the evil forces of darkness.
Unknown caller.
Phony number all the time. And so I looked it up. I knew it was in the Bible. Isaiah 50, verse 7. I have set my face like flint. And that is a prophetic word, which was basically Jesus. But looking at 1 John 3:8, the reason the Son of God appeared was to destroy the devil's work. So if we believers are Jesus's hands and feet and mouth on earth, what are we to do? Destroy the devil's work. And you'll see at the end what I'm talking about. So this is the correlation between what they're doing to Trump and what they did to Jesus. The same spirits were behind the Pharisees that hated Jesus. They were the religious rulers of that time under Roman occupation. The Jews did not like the Romans being over them. The Pharisees were the scribes and priests and the Sadducees, but they're basically referred to as the Pharisees in the Bible. They hated Jesus. Why? They were afraid that if people kept following Jesus, they would lose their place of power. So this is what I wrote. Pretty interesting. Remember, this is right after he got in, or he was placed in there. The chief priests, Pharisees, were what Jesus called the blind guides, like the Mockingbird media we have today. They were the blind guides for the people. They, along with the Herodians, which were the traitors. Now, the Herodians were those that were loyal to Herod, King Herod, wicked Herod. And so those Herodians were basically the bitter enemies of the Pharisees, yet both of them got together and plotted to kill Jesus, because even though they were bitter enemies, the Pharisees, who considered themselves holy and pure, defiled themselves by going in with the Herodians. But so the Herodians were the traitors. They were basically the deep state. They were the elites that Jesus called out, these Pharisees, because he said, you tie up heavy loads on men's shoulders, but you yourselves are not willing to lift a finger to help them. Matthew 23:4. So just like Pelosi, Cuomo, de Blasio, all the corrupt politicians that were forcing restrictions during the COVID on the masses, like limiting travel, shutting down businesses. There were small businesses now. The big corporate businesses like Walmart and all that, no, they were allowed to stay open. Closing churches, but allowing strip joints and bars to be open and liquor stores. Remember that? And so they required us, they mandated us to shut down and wear masks. But remember, there were many of them that were caught with a mask off at games and parties and everything else. And all of a sudden, they're all having good times together, all tight. And they was talking about their stupid 6-foot distancing and all that. Total insanity. But that's what Jesus said. You put heavy burdens on men's shoulders, but you don't lift a hand to help them out. That's what this whole tyranny is all about. So, let's see. So the chief priests and Pharisees, the ruling class that Jesus correctly pointed out, that they love the place of honor at banquets and the most important seats in the synagogues. They love to be greeted in the marketplace and to have people call them rabbi. That's Matthew 23:6. These senators, congressmen, notice how they have this title, the honorable, and they're definitely not honorable. And the founding fathers, I found out, by the way, they had no intention. It would have been beyond their scope to ever see anybody with titles like the Honorable. Even Your Honor, Judge, in a courtroom, that was definitely not something that they wanted, yet it evolved through the wickedness that we got. So the crooked deep state, the media voices, I'm going to associate them with the Pharisees. They stirred up the crowd as the blind guides that they were to demand their Barabbas, the fake son of the Father. By the way, Barabbas, who was, well, I'll get into that, but Bar is B-A-R, son of. Just like Simon Bar Jonah, Peter, Simon, son of Jonah. Bar is son of. Abba is father. So they chose the wrong counterfeit son of the Father for the real son of the Father, Jesus. So Barabbas was guilty of insurrection and murder, just like Biden was guilty of it. And Jesus, like Trump, was innocent, and who was also God's genuine choice for the people. The Pharisees didn't love Barabbas. The deep state doesn't love Biden. They just needed to get Jesus, like Trump, out of the way so they could hold on to the power and continue in their corruption. Barabbas was a convenient placeholder, just like Biden. They had no real use for him. Pontius Pilate, through God's sovereign plan, had chosen a scoundrel. He thought there's no way that they're gonna take Barabbas back, because Pontius Pilate actually had a dream, or his wife had a dream that she told him, and it was a real nightmare. And she had the word brought to Pontius Pilate when all the Pharisees were stirring up the crowds, have Jesus crucified, crucify him, crucify him. And her word was, I suffered terribly in a dream today about this man. Do not have anything to do with his death. So Pontius Pilate brought the prisoner Barabbas out. He said, here's your choice. You can have him or you can have Jesus. But of course the Jews, meaning the Pharisees, stirred up the crowd to ask or demand that Jesus be crucified, and they want Barabbas. So that's what happened. The same thing, the same tricks of the devil. It's the same all the way throughout history. And so the chosen one, the one that they chose, was the scoundrel. So the people chose between him and the authentic one, God's true choice for the people. And so Daniel 11:32 says, and that's another part of the Bible, and it's not referring specifically to this, so I don't want to confuse the two. But I love this. Daniel 11:32. This is regarding a vision that he had towards the end times when the Antichrist comes. And so people that say you need to submit to authorities, when they're doing right, not when they're doing wrong. Daniel 11:32. But the people who know their God will firmly resist him. So don't tell me you have to submit to authority no matter who it is. No, you don't. And women, wives, if your husband is abusing you or your children, you do not have to submit. Get out. Save your kids. Save your life. Get out. Same with prostitutes. You do not have to submit to these pimps. Get out. Abusive relationship. Get out. Do not submit. I don't care what kind of church might say you got to submit to your husband. Nah, there's boundaries. Okay? And the other thing I want to say to those who think we have to submit to the government no matter what about Mordecai in the book of Esther, one of my favorite books, especially now? He did not comply. And Haman went after him. But what happened? Just like what's going to happen now. Haman had determined to wipe out all the Jews because he hated Mordecai, because Mordecai would not bow in honor to Haman. And so Haman and his family decided they were going to string him up. They built a big gallows. And guess what? Read the book of Esther. Man, you got to watch. These things, these patterns of God are going to repeat themselves. Just like these are repeating itself. Just like they're after Jesus, they're after Trump. Satan is the one that's after Trump. And Satan was the one that was after Jesus, because Trump is God's chosen man. Look at David, King David. Satan tried to take him out through Saul a whole bunch of times. And even later, once he became king, his own son rebelled against him. So we have to pray for the protection of Trump and his family. Even Jesus, when he was on earth teaching, what happened? Satan used the evil king at that time to go after John the Baptist, had him thrown in prison, and at this wild party he had, the daughter of the queen danced for him. Obviously he's drunk and full of lust, and said, "I'll give you whatever you want." And she went to her mother, said, "What should I give him? Or what should I demand?" And he had already said, "Even up to half of my kingdom." The mother said, "Go tell him you want John the Baptist's head. I want John the Baptist's head." John the Baptist was in prison. The king had him executed. And so, I'm sure John the Baptist was his relative, by the way. It was his cousin. All right. And so there had to be an affinity. There had to be a sorrow in that. We got to pray, because I heard a word that Amanda Grace gave. Really pray for the kids of all these people, the whistleblowers, the good A-teams, the people that are trying to restore our country to godliness and justice and law and order. You really want to pray for the safety of not only Trump, not only, just name all of them, all the good people. Pray for their kids, their families. Pray that God would put a hedge of protection around them, warrior angels, and defeat the enemy in Jesus' mighty name, the name the devils fear. So, thank you, Cynthia. Appreciate that. I'll do another video on some other things that I see parallels in God's patterns for today and what we've seen in the past. Alrighty. Talk to you soon.